Hey, welcome back, friends. It's Shawn, and we're continuing with week 2 of WWSD. What would Shawn do? And what I'm doing in this series is just taking a file. If you missed last week, you can go back and check the email from last week, or there'll be notes on how to do that in this week's email as well. You can go check it out. So I just started with kind of a basic file, and each week I'm going to build onto it and add some different things, and you can just follow along. You can try those same things. The whole idea is, hey, let's take a file that you might have something like this and see what we can do to it to add some functionality, make it easier to work with, and provide you with more efficiency in your work and things like that. So anyway, so here I've taken sort of what we had last week. I tweaked it a little bit. I just got rid of the conditional formatting. We're going to do a couple different things this week. So the first thing I want to do is, if you've never used sparklines, we're gonna put a sparkline in here. And so what a sparkline is basically a way to show a graph or show trends for data without having to have a big graph. So it's kind of cool. Here's what we're going to do is we're going to come down here, and I'm just going to drop one in here, and it'll give me a visual of kind of what's in this column up above. It works best when you have a row, because it's sort of easier to go across the row and see the data, but we're going to do it with a column. You can do the same thing. So you go to insert sparklines, and we're going to pick, doesn't matter what you can pick one and then go back to the other one if you want. So we're going to do column. And data range, we're going to select these cells right here, and location, and then it just plops that right in at the bottom. And so when you click on it, you get a whole toolbar that shows up once you have a sparkline. And so you can change the color, you can change the type of graph, you can change it back to a line, whatever you want to do. And you'll notice here, if I change, so let's take one of these and just boost it way up. So if I go to, like, say 400, you'll see it automatically update in the graph. And that's what I love about sparklines, is it's so clean and lightweight, and yet it'll still give you a visual look. You know, if you just glance real quick at these numbers, especially if the numbers, you know, if there's not a 4 in the front of one of them, you wouldn't know right off the bat which one's highest. So it's just a quick way to show you that stuff. And conditional formatting works, you know, the same way, where to give you visuals on there. The other thing I want to do is talk about data validation. So this is, anytime you're inputting data validation is a great way to make sure that, you know, especially if other people are using the file, to make sure that the data is being constrained to what you want it to be. So we could use it for this shift column, just to make sure that the only options are 1 and 2, and it would give us a little drop down that would say 1 or 2. And then if you tried to enter something else, it would say you can't do that. What we're going to do is we're going to do it for supervisor, because I just added this column. And I see this happen a lot. Anytime there is a chance that people could put in something that looks the same as something else and is not exactly the same. So let's say, you know, if we had, you know, one supervisor was Jones and one was Joan, let's say, I don't know, something like that, or someone put they got confused and put Jones. What data validation does is it basically eliminates that option, because it's going to constrain it to certain options. So we'll go to data, got to find it here, data validation, right down here, data validation. And there's a lot of different options. I've got videos out on the site at yourexceltutor.com/learn. There's one for data validation, so you can check that out and give you more info. But what we're going to do is we're going to pick a list, and in this case we're just going to enter the list right here. So let's say we got Jones, Miller, Spencer. Okay, those are our 3 options, and so we'll say okay, and then we're just going to copy this guy down. And so now, and when you're off of that cell, you don't see the drop downs, but as soon as you click in there, it's going to give you those options. You could also just type it in. So I could type in Jones, that'd be fine. But if I try to type in like Brown, it's going to give me an error that says you can't do that. So this just makes it easy. That way, if I've got a couple different Millers in here and I want to filter by a supervisor name, or whatever the column is, you're not going to have to worry about words or names or whatever that are slightly different from each other. So it's a great way to kind of constrain that. So the last thing we're going to do on today's is, so last week we did a little bit of conditional formatting. Today we're going to kind of step it up a little bit. So I meet a lot of people that maybe they've used conditional formatting and they've used it pretty extensively, but usually they've only used it for a cell. So what I mean by that is, like, if this cell is the biggest cell or the biggest number, make this cell, D5, make that cell green. But what they don't usually get into, and what I like to use, is to make a whole row do something based on a single cell's value. So what we're going to do is, we've got this 400 here. I want the whole row. I'm going to highlight all these and make conditional formatting in here. I want the row that has the highest number out of the group to show up a certain way. So what we're going to do is we're going to highlight all these. We're going to go to the home and conditional formatting. And instead of doing one of these up top, we're going to come down here to new rule. And this one's a little different. So just follow along here, but we're going to use a formula. And how this is different is you can kind of create something new that wasn't in those options up front. So what we're going to do is we'll say equals. I'm going to click this cell. One little quirky thing is, it by default is going to put the $sign in, which is going to constrain it to this exact row. And we don't want the row to constrain, but we do want the $sign in front of the D, because we want it to look at this this column no matter which other cell we're in. So you'll see as we go along here. So equals D3 equals, and I'm going to say large, which is going to find the largest value out of this set right here. So that's good the way it is, because we're just going to keep that constrained like it is. And then we'll say comma 1, which is, that's what that is. If you use the large function, you're going to pick a range, and then comma, and then what do you want, the highest number, or do you want the second highest number? So in this case we want the highest number, and that's going to be number 1 is for the highest number. So what this is saying is, if cell D3 is the largest value in this range, then we're going to pick what we want it to do. In this case we'll say, maybe we'll make it green, and we can make the font, say we make the font bold, and I think we're just good with that. So I say okay, and we'll click this. So now this one nothing happened, right? Because we just did this first one. But what we're going to do is highlight this whole row, hit Format Painter, and we're going to paint this all the way down to the bottom. As soon as we're done, you'll see that this row, because it has 400, it went green and went bold. So if just to test this out, like we'll make this 100, and then the next highest one all of a sudden showed up. So any of these that we pick, like 235, we'll make that 325. That becomes the highest. So I love this type of conditional formatting, because sometimes I'll use it for status updates. So if I have a status that is, work in progress, and then I have not started yet, or holding, or finished, which I have some of these on a log file I use. As soon as I set it to completed or finished, it'll gray out the whole row and make it italicized, so you can easily see which things are completed. So yeah, watch this video again, try that out in some of your data, because I think that's a great way to, the cell itself is great, but I usually like to see, especially if I have a lot of columns, I like to see that extended all the way across, so that there's no doubt, which row I'm looking at that has, say, in this case, the highest value. So, all right, so just to recap, we did sparklines, we talked about some data validation to select different choices, and then we did this conditional formatting all the way across. So all three of those you can find more information on and videos on if you go to yourexceltutor.com/learn, and I'll have a link to that in the email coming up. And yeah, I'd love to get a hold of any files that you want to send my way. We can do some work on those and have you featured in the next videos that we have coming down the road. So have a great day, and we'll talk to you later.